Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we've got 5 must-buy wide receivers for Week 3 NFL action here. We're approaching the games. It's late in the week, but these are still players while we have the chance before those Sunday matchups kick off and we get those games started that I think you should go out there and still try and make some offers for. Some of these guys, most of them actually, are new names that haven't been featured in any of my past trade targets and advice videos from this week. So make sure you go check these players out and see if they can help your lineups here down the stretch. And of course, if you've got questions about your individual fantasy leagues or any of your matchups, drop those down in the comment section below, and I'm happy to help you out so y'all can get the edge with your teams and lineups this week. But with that being said, drop down, click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Give today's video a like before we get started. Let's hit that intro and get straight in to our first must-buy player. Alrighty, here we go. So diving straight into our first wide receiver here. I know there's a lot of you out there probably panicking majorly on Robert Woods right now, but I'm here to tell you, sit back, relax. Things are going to be just fine with Robert Woods the rest of this fantasy season. We're still in that adjustment phase. In the first couple of weeks here, I'm not all that concerned in putting the production and the usage in setting it in stone based off of what we've seen here to this point. I think Robert Woods has a breakout game here in Week 3 against Tampa Bay. If we see the Buccaneers play this Rams football team similar to the way that they played the Dallas Cowboys in Week 1, they're going to take the running game out of the picture here. And for what I expect to be a very tightly contested football game, they're going to have to pass the football, and they're going to have to be very active in that phase of things. So I think Robert gets some more usage this week. I think he has a bigger role with this team. We've seen here so far 9 targets last week. That's encouraging. That's an increase from that Week 1 performance where he was kind of saved by a touchdown. But in back-to-back weeks, 8.5 fantasy points or more and half PPR scoring. Those are very quality floor numbers, and you can get that dependable week-over-week production out of Woods. This isn't a player that's going to come out here and win your weeks for you every single week because his upside is not all that elite, and I would say that his counterpart in this offense here, Cooper Kupp, has better upside in that category of things. But again, if you need a safe floor, a weekly starter, Robert Woods isn't a player that I get too concerned about with matchups, and I think that his utilization will continue to grow upon itself here and get back to that very steady production we've seen from him the last few seasons prior. Justin Jefferson up here at the second spot on the list. Jefferson is the number 1 in this offense. Don't kid yourself. Adam Thielen in fantasy football has outproduced Justin Jefferson to this point in the season, but Jefferson's still seeing more targets, 10 targets in Week 2 as opposed to Thielen's 7. But what makes the difference here is that Adam Thielen has 3 touchdowns already this season to Justin Jefferson's 1. This is similar to what we saw last year. Jefferson had 1,400 yards, Thielen had under 1,000. This is there's a gap in talent here. There's a gap in production at the end of the season when things balance out a little bit here. I think Jefferson will walk away with the higher finish in our fantasy scoring. But for now, it's still a little bit skewed back to the way that we saw that heavy touchdown count swing last season. Jefferson, though, will continue to be a highly targeted player. He will continue to improve his production, and once he finds himself scoring those touchdowns and making those big plays again that we saw from him last year, by no means has he been a bust to this point in the season, but I would say his ceiling has a lot farther to go than where it's at right now. So if you can capitalize on him while he's being, again, sell the point that Adam Thielen's scoring more points on paper, but again, just know in the back of your mind that Jefferson is the player who should be valued as the number 1 in this Vikings offense, and you can use some of those factors that have been working against him per se in the present moment to your advantage to find that high upside piece for the rest of this season. A.J. Brown here. So Brown had a really disappointing Week 2. That's going to lower his stock. Even the eye test, if you were watching, it didn't look all that great. Brown had some drops, wasn't playing his best football, only caught 3 of his 9 passes heading his way, but he was still the most targeted Tennessee Titan. He outdid Julio Jones, who had a very impressive performance, and I think is a player who I'd be selling high on right now because I don't know if I trust Julio for the duration of this season. But A.J. Brown, I believe, is still the number 1 in this Tennessee offense. He's got all the tools. A very similar player to a DK Metcalf, or these two are dominant deep threat players, and their run after the catch is very, very strong as well. If you can get a reasonable price for A.J. Brown. This is a high upside wide receiver one play on a week-to-week basis. Now, he does have some floor issues, I would say, because of the fact that this Tennessee offense can get a little bit rushing dependent and rushing heavy. But even in a game last week when we saw AJ only catch those 3 passes and we saw Derrick Henry dominate late in that football game, he still did have 9 targets come his way. You're getting close to that 10 target marker. That's still elite territory. He's still finding a way to get volume headed his way despite the offensive outlook and situation that he's in right now. Corey Davis for the New York Jets. Corey is a player I'm sitting this week. I sat him last week, but we're getting out of the woods soon here. Corey's got the Denver Broncos here in week 3. I think the Jets are going to struggle again in this matchup, and I think that Denver is going to get the best of the Jets. Zach Wilson's going to turn the football over. But after that game, Corey Davis gets the Titans, his former team, a little bit of a revenge game, an easy secondary. He gets the Falcons, another favorable matchup. Then he's got a bye week, and then New England. New England's another tough one. We saw what happened in the first time that these two teams played this season, 4 interceptions for Zach Wilson. I think they'll struggle a little bit. Now, the Jets theoretically should play a little bit better this time around, but I still think we want to sit Corey Davis after that. The rest of the way after those games, and mind you, there are 2 very, very advantageous games in between those performances, Corey Davis is out of the woods. Like I said, the matchups open up, and there's not anything that really scares me too much the rest of the way down the stretch of the season. There are some tough matchups, but none to the extent that we've seen early on in his career as a New York Jet. So be patient with Corey Davis. He's a high upside potential wide receiver 2 play if he hits his ceiling and is able to capitalize on his upside and potential as a player. So stick with him. I think you can get him for probably the most reasonable price of anybody on this list, considering the fact that he's not a big-name wideout. He hasn't really had elite fantasy track record or success in the past, although he did have a breakout season last year. This is probably the one if you're looking for a value buy this week. Go out, make an offer. Corey Davis can be a great asset to your team down the stretch. And then finally here, Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears. He's been disappointing to this point in the season. Week 1, didn't have the best numbers, although he did have 11 targets against the Rams. Being covered by Jalen Ramsey, though, obviously it's going to be hard to come by catches. It's going to be hard to put up production that is relevant and that's putting yourself in a situation to have good statistical output. In Week 2, the targets go down to 4 against the Cincinnati Bengals, but we're talking about a matchup when the Bears went from Andy Dalton to Justin Fields and they had to toss him into the fray, so not exactly the most favorable or ideal situation for him to be in. A-Rob has had an immense target share in this Bears offense back-to-back seasons now. I don't believe that that's just going to go away for a simple quarterback change. Justin Fields is in the mix now. A-Rob's going to see more downfield targets. I think the ceiling in the offensive production increases with Justin Fields under center, and if he can come out here against the Browns this week, hit things off, and never give Andy Dalton the chance to get that starting job back, A-Rob is absolutely a top 12 fantasy receiver for the rest of the season. Now, this is a lot of projection because the numbers have been disappointing to this part in the year. But what I've seen the last 2 seasons from A-Rob as a player, from this offensive system, and him being the clear number 1 player in this offense in the pass-catching game, I believe in him. I think he's got upside here and a very, very safe floor once he gets back on track and this offense can find some consistency. Alrighty, those were 5 must-buy wide receivers as we head into those Week 3 games and matchups. I'll make another one of these episodes heading into, or at the top of Week 4, I should say, with an updated stock watch, if you will, based on how these players produce, based off of how the games go and what I see. Obviously, there's going to be some players that have down games that I think are going to have very successful seasons, and you're going to want to go out and target those players and bring their assets onto your football team. But with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning into today's video. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.